A killer still roams in the guts of this city, and you let him walk away. Have you done your best to stop him, to bring this murderer to justice?
Jason, with great power comes great responsibility.
That's not how it goes.
And with, well, then maybe my version is better, and that is with video game, or no, God damn it, with comic book movie comes shitty video game tie-in.
Yes, that is how it goes.
Yes, and we're talking about
That's
the amazing Spider-Man 2, the video game that came out, which I haven't seen the movie yet, but
I hear the movie's not very good. I haven't seen it.
I don't know what the fuck is going on anymore. I'm starting to wonder, like, I don't like to put this out in the world a lot, right?
Yeah.
But I'm starting to wonder, like, maybe we should just stop making Spider-Man games until somebody like Rocksteady comes along.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to make it out like Rocksteady's the only person who's ever made a good video game ever, or good comic book video game ever, but like this is Beanox's fourth main Spider-Man game, and they've also worked on like 3 others on top of that.
Well, you know what they say, 5th time's a charm.
These guys should be the greatest Spider-Man video game developers in the history of mankind.
Well, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, I guess.
Well, no, that's exactly what it makes. That's there's studies that have been done.
If you're doing something shitty and you continually do it wrong, you're not going to get better.
I would say that even if you're doing something shitty, you should be able to do it. If you do the same shitty thing over and over again, you should get better at doing that shitty thing, right?
Or maybe you just reinforce those shitty habits.
Maybe so. Well, this is Amazing Spider-Man 2 by Beanox, and I think that the thing that's probably most curious to me about this particular game is that it seems like a step back from the first Amazing Spider-Man game.
Oh, that would not surprise me. Treyarch did the same thing in that when they made Spider-Man 2, it was really good. When they made Spider-Man 3, it was not.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There's just like there is a laundry list of issues with this particular game, but let's start at the very beginning where we always do, and that is the story.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you this question about Spider-Man, right?
Okay.
How many times... Like, I think that Spider-Man, maybe more so than any other superhero, has been represented in the media so much for so long.
Yes.
Right? There was the old 70s cartoon show.
Yeah.
There was the 80s cartoon show.
I would say
there was
Batman and Superman, maybe.
More?
Yeah.
Because there have been, 4, now 5?
He's one of the 3 most recognizable.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
five Spider-Man movies so far.
So the story of Spider-Man 2 is basically, it's a very loose... I don't think it's really connected to the movie, but I don't know because I haven't seen it.
It's not.
But it's this very loose kind of like, once again, retelling the origins of some of Spider-Man's enemies and having you fight them in the context of the universe that I guess they set up in the first one.
This is kind of what they did was they kind of made their own little tangent universe that was pretty closely related to the movie, but not completely.
Okay.
That's what they've done with these games. That's what Beanox was shooting for.
Well, for people who don't have any idea and they've never played any of these games before, basically you're Spider-Man, you're in New York, there is a big crime wave, and there's a bunch of new kind of villains and people coming out and doing stuff. And if you've never encountered Spider-Man media before, some of the things that happen in this game might take you by surprise. But if you're in any way, shape, or form familiar with any part of Spider-Man, then, like, this story is going to be fucking boring as shit.
Oh, sweetheart, play this game? And he's this dude, he's got the powers of a spider.
It's so weird. Well, no, and what I mean by that is, like, okay, this is... I'm not even going to say this is a spoiler for the game. I'm just going to say this, and anybody who's listening who's familiar with Spider-Man is going to know what happens at the end of this scenario, right? So Spider-Man is in New York, and about a third of the way into the game, this task force comes to New York. They've got cyber armor and whatever.
Of course they do.
And they're being bankrolled by this big industrialist called Wilson Fisk.
Oh, nope, not ringing a bell.
And he's this benevolent dude who he's from New York and he wants to clean up the streets or whatever.
Guy. Probably owns a couple of delis or something.
Yeah, something like that. He's big. He's very big.
Big guy.
He's actually being voiced by a guy who's
Jolly.
doing his best John Goodman impression. But
okay.
But then a little bit later on in the game, you start hearing these whispers of this new underground crime lord called the Kingpin.
Okay.
Okay, so now anybody who has read any Spider-Man comics, anybody
I think I missed all of those.
Right.
Was he in them?
or seen, let's see, any of the animated stuff?
I've seen a lot. I've seen pretty much all, but I don't remember him.
If you've seen Daredevil, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the things that they're falling back on here are just like I know, Cletus Cassidy is in this game. I know who that is, and I know that maybe nobody does, or maybe other people don't.
Non-comics fans probably don't.
I don't even get the impression anymore like this game is being marketed to people who aren't way into Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not tied directly into the movie, so you don't have that, like, I can't wait for the movie to come out, I want to play the game type of thing. I feel like it's for people who are into Spider-Man, and if you're into Spider-Man, you're going to know all of the plot twists from a mile away. And so the story just becomes like, bleh. I mean, this is Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it starts with you tracking down Uncle Ben's killer. Like, that... okay.
Okay. That would be like going into Empire Strikes Back and
trying to track down the stormtroopers that shot up Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen.
Yeah. Or even like remembering the time you met Ben.
Right. So the story here is, shall we say, predictable, trite, and doesn't do anything new. I mean, it maybe takes the Spider-Man universe a little bit more seriously. I mean, because most of the time you see Spider-Man, it seems like you're seeing him as a very comic book type of person. This seems to be a little bit more grounded in reality, but not much.
Yeah.
Also, it's weird. I just thought about this right now. There is no Mary Jane and there is no Gwen Stacy in this entire game.
Really?
You don't ever run into it. It just occurred to me that never happens. They're not part of the plot. They don't call you up on the phone. In the first game, I couldn't get fucking Gwen to shut up. She'd just call you every 5 minutes.
She was everywhere.
But yeah, there isn't really any of that in here, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think it's worth noting. But enough about the story. Let's go over...
You know who his girlfriend is in the comics right now?
No.
A dwarf.
What?
Named Anna Maria.
Really?
Yeah.
For reals?
For reals.
Okay. I might have to start reading Spider-Man comics, you guys.
Oh, it gets weird.
So from there, let's go ahead and move on to the gameplay. Now, the gameplay here has some tweaks. The biggest one that I think is the way that the web system works, where you now do right trigger to shoot a web to the right side, or left trigger to shoot the web to the left side.
Which seems cool.
Which just gives it just like the teeniest amount of interactivity that's not just hold down button and go.
Yeah.
Which is cool. It also lets you, if you practice at it, you get good at it, you can pull off some really nice stuff. Like, they even have a thing where if you release your web and you're close to the ground, you'll go forward faster, as opposed to if you release it when you're coming up to the top of the arc, you'll go higher.
Oh, yeah.
So
some decent physics.
When I got the hang of that, I was like basically just motoring down the street like 2 inches above cars at like 120 miles an hour, just like pew. And unfortunately, that brings up, just very briefly, the fact that we're going to come back to this as a harder point later on, but that they do not have that many lines of dialogue recorded in this game. There's not very much flavor text here. Like, I know that when you're swinging along, he'll say, "I've had too much coffee today," or something like that. It didn't really even make any sense to me. Or "That's enough coffee for you, Spidey," or something like that.
He's pooping all over Broadway.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, Jesus, these pigeons are huge.
Right. Spider-Man, he really is a menace, that J. Jonah Jameson. He's got the... he's really on point with that. But so the actual traversal, they've got the whole web rush system is back from the first one, which I found myself actually using way less than
the first one.
I
used it a lot in the first one.
I mean, I found that it was easier just to swing on buildings than it was to try to do that
and
stuff.
more fun.
Yeah. The combat, if you haven't played any of these games before, is very much kind of a... it's kind of like, maybe call it 2/3 Arkham Asylum. Like, you have your spider sense that tingles, and then when you hit a button, you do a counter to people's attacks. But then there's also some range stuff and some stuff that you can do for crowd control. You get a couple powers later on in the game, so it's not just webs. You also get some other stuff that you could do with your web shooters. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but whatever. It's a video game.
I think we need a first-person Spider-Man game with the Oculus Rift.
Okay. It comes with a free bucket, right?
Yeah.
The combat is it's competent. It's not anything. Like, you don't get the same feeling of like when you play Batman, right? And you're playing that combat where you're stringing together. Like one of the main differences here is that you don't have to keep your combo going to maintain your combo multiplier, and the combo multiplier doesn't get used as much here as it does in Arkham Asylum or Arkham City or even Captain America or some of the other games that use this. So it's less important to keep your combo going, which means that there's less incentive to have these scenarios where you're just beating a dude and you're going between people and he's doing flips and you really feel the crush of hitting people. It's just not as visceral as it is in those other games. In fact, a lot of times if you're in combat and you start to get too damaged, it's more useful to pull all the way out of combat. Except that sometimes the game traps you in an arena when you're trying to get back to heal or something. Spider-Man just turns around and he's like, I can't leave. And I'm like, we're not leaving. You just go over there for a minute.
Just take cover. I'm not trying to run.
Yeah. All that's bolstered by I'm not sure if this was in the first one, but they have an upgrade system where when you do certain things, and they're also small packages that you pick up around the city, you pick up these tech points that you can use to upgrade up to 4 times, a whole bunch of different things. They unlock some new moves. Those generally tend to feel good. It's just that as far as I'm concerned, they don't come fast enough. You don't get the points fast enough. So, like, I didn't actually max out everything until I think I had one thing left after I beat the game, and they put me back into the city that I had to max out.
Yeah.
But on top of that, they also have this new system where they have a bunch of suits for you to wear. And each one of the Spider-Man suits has a different set of 3 attributes for Spider-Man that are bolstered by the suit. So you'll have one that's like healing and webbing, and your movement speed are all bolstered. And the more you use those suits, the more they level up, giving you more bonuses to those things.
So you can level the suits independently.
Yes. The problem with this is that unless you are really, really enjoying just swinging around and doing the random Radiant events that come up in the city, you're probably not... Because, okay, in order to change your suit, you have to web swing to the train, jump on top of the train, go through a loading screen, go back to your house, walk up to a closet, open the closet, pick your suit, then go back, load back into the city, and go back. So, for the most part... I was never... Like, they don't give you... It might have made a difference if they said, like... This mission is going to be heavy sneaking, right? So, like, I'm going to go back and get the Spider-Man Noir suit because that has sneaking bonuses. But they don't. They just dump you into the missions. So you never really know what you're going to have. So there's not a lot of incentive to keep changing. Also, it was maybe... I used the black Spider-Man suit because it had an XP bonus. And it was about 2/3 of the way through the game where I finally max leveled that one suit.
Yeah.
So like I said, unless you're just screwing around with the events in the world... there's really not very much incentive to go back and buy them. Also, I didn't know this, Jason, but I'm going to hold you personally accountable for this.
Sure, fine.
Spider-Man's had some fucking shit ugly suits. Like, some of these suits I'm just like, ugh.
You didn't like the gray and green neon?
No. And what was that one I was talking about? Ricochet or something like that?
Yeah, well,
it was like
the 90s. We don't really talk about that.
Right.
I think it was the 90s, right? Yeah, it was the 90s.
Yeah, some pretty ugly suits. So it was a nice thought, but it would have been better if, like, he could have ducked into, like, I don't know, a public toilet or something, like on the map and just switched out at will. You didn't have to go all the way back to your house, which is weird because they model the Parker residence, but the only thing to do there is change costumes or replay missions. I mean, Aunt May's down there and she'll give you some flavor text, but as we saw in our Dojo video, it's not really worth listening to.
Yeah. It's like, blah, 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 I'm going to go fight crime.
Yeah. So you got normal combat, you got swinging. You also have a few sections in the game where you have to go through stealth because when all the bad guys have guns, they will cut Spider-Man down so you can climb around the ceiling. You can get guys out of the way. There's a whole bunch of sub-missions that revolve around if you get seen too much, then they'll end the mission, so you have to do it all stealthy. It's okay. I think that I might have complained about this when we did our review way, way back in the old days on for Amazing Spider-Man 1, is that nobody has yet managed to solve the problem of when you go and stick to the ceiling and you're walking upside down, it's hella disorienting.
Yeah.
Like, it's just really difficult to know, especially when you're in the dark and everything is like, you just can't tell what's going on. Now, some of that's bolstered by the fact that you have spider sense that you can turn on that's essentially detective vision.
Yeah.
Will show you. There's an upgrade you could do for it that shows you, like, the vision cones of the guys that you're looking at, which, like everything else in this review, is all well and good if you're in a dark room, but spider sense tinges everything in the world light blue. So if you're on top of a building with the sky that's light blue, it's like suddenly becomes this blinding light where you just can't see shit.
I'm falling off the earth.
Right. You're just like, God, it's not very cool. And so it turns something that that seems like it could have been useful, not super useful. Also, like, there's a bunch of comic book pages, and there's all these the boxes that I mentioned before. There's stuff that you can interact with in the environment. And all that stuff, you can see that through buildings and stuff when you have your spider sense turned on, but it's all blue too.
Yeah.
So it's like a lighter blue on a darker blue on top of a blue tinge, and it's just like if they had made those things orange, some of the most important things in the level are orange, but if they'd made some of them red or some of them green or some of them purple, it would have been an easy way to distinguish between these things. And once again, this is the fourth game that Beanox has made. I don't know how we're still getting this Bush League shit.
Well, what's
man.
funny is that they were saying we just want to take our first game and just hone it.
Right.
They just like crapped all over it. It sounds like.
But I was telling you before that that in the first game they were concentrating really hard on Spider Slayers, and they went and altered a bunch of Spider-Man's villains to be these genetic, like they took Scorpion,
like all of them,
made him into a genetic experiment, right? I mean, here we've got guys like Kraven the Hunter, or Kingpin, or there's a bunch of different Spider-Man villains in here that you have to deal with, and they're all much more traditionally the villains of Spider-Man universe. So, like, in the Ultimates universe, Kraven has messed with his genetics to make himself a genetic mutation. Here, he's just the world's greatest hunter.
Yeah.
So it's almost like taking a step back from that change that they made in the first one, which just made everything a little bit more boring and generic. On top of this, the character models in this game are ugly as shit. It
does not look like a next-gen game.
It's not very good looking.
Especially the character models.
Yeah.
The environments and everything from what we played, they look okay.
They're all right. Yeah. They're all right.
But, we've seen better environments like in Infamous, Second Son.
Oh, God.
And even in last generation, there were better environments in a sandbox.
This is not really a fair comparison, but like Grand Theft Auto 5 is fucking beautiful.
Absolutely. But the character models in this are garbage.
Like, I couldn't even really tell that the main character was supposed to look like Andrew Garfield.
I didn't think he was.
I didn't think he looks anything like that.
Yeah.
So they've also got a few sections in the game where they take you out of the Spider-Man suit and you're using Peter Parker's press credentials to like gather information and stuff. And they have a few sections where you have to do this kind of Mass Effect style dialogue where you basically it's just a tree, which is weird because it's one of those things where like you can tell that this is kind of inspired by Mass Effect, but the reason that Mass Effect worked was because you had
the Paragon system.
Paragon and Renegade.
Yeah.
Here you just have 3 conversation options and then exit.
Yeah.
It could have just been a cutscene. Like you're not adding anything making me hit X when we could have just watched a cutscene for a few seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, it's even more tedious than that because I don't know how this shit happens. Like you can't. So when you start up a dialogue with a character, they start talking, and if you got subtitles turned on and you're not super into the kind of mediocre voice acting that they're doing, you just want to get the story, right? So you read that subtitle, and you're waiting for the person on screen to get to the next thing. So you hit the button. Nothing happens. There is no way to skip to the next line of dialogue without just exiting that entire section of the conversation. Which, all of these things, I know how they sound. I know that they sound nitpicky, but it's just like there's a certain level of polish in video games that I feel like we're entitled to expect in this particular day and age. And that this particular game did not do... It was very clunky. It was kind of boring, and it just kind of became a grind. The only thing I can say about it that was really great was that it's short. But before we stop, because I don't know how long we've been doing this. Okay, but before we stop, let's get to the single worst idea that this game does. And that is that about a third of the way into the game, when the soldiers that I mentioned showed up, they start this system where randomly crime will be generated on the map.
Yeah,
guys are breaking into a thing. Here's a car chase. Here's a fire. Here's a standoff with the cops. There's about 6 different ones, right? And when you do one of those, it makes this meter go up on to the right side to hero. And you have 3 hero levels, right? It goes hero level 1, hero level 2, hero level 3. Then on the other side of that,
you didn't unlock hero level 4?
No, there is no hero level 4.
I'm pretty sure there is.
Oh, yeah? That is what makes the game really awesome, right?
Well, it's the blowjob levels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Where, hey, Spidey, let me suck your dick.
Right. We need to rescue somebody in an alley, and then she's like,
Yep.
let me show you my appreciation.
Yep. That's level 4.
Level 4. So the thing is that the other side of that are these, like, renegade levels, or I forget what they call them, like hated levels or something like that. And every time a new crime is randomly pops up on the map, it moves that scale towards that other level. So at hero level 1, 2, and 3, people are just cool. Nobody's fucking with you. But at like, I hate you level 1. Like there's dudes out on the street with machine guns that'll shoot at you if they see you. At like I hate you level 2, there are turrets on buildings and like spider slayers wandering around, and they'll follow you and fuck you all to pieces. And at level 3, I don't even know how this happens in New York City, they start putting up big hexagon force fields between buildings just to fuck you.
That's excessive.
Because when you fly through them, it turns off your web slingers and you can't swing anymore.
Yeah.
So what this means is that if you're just out on the map being like, I'm playing a Spider-Man game, woo, I want to do this, is that you have to constantly be fighting these repetitive events that happen over and over and over again just to keep this meter up so that you're not having to deal with the entire city trying to murder you the entire time. Add to that the fact that every single time that you beat up a bunch of guys or you solve the deadlock with the cops or you do the car crash or whatever, it stops. Spider-Man says almost the exact same one or two things. Then it cuts to this news report with the news reporter, and you can hit the A button to jump over it. But I just want you to consider this, that like in this framework that they have set up where you're having to solve crimes all the time, you're having to do these crimes constantly. And every time you manage to beat one, you've got to fucking look at this report screen.
Oh, right.
The first time you see it, it's fine, but it's just a still image. And it's Whitney Chang saying, like, oh, today a local person was rescued by Spider-Man. We all owe him a great debt to the city. It's like 5 seconds. But every time, it's like this Bugle News Network logo has to come on. They have to play the jingle and do it. Right. And so you can imagine that once you've seen that, like 20 times, you're just like, oh, my God, turn this the fuck off.
It's like the same commercial playing on Hulu every commercial break.
Right. So while I was trying to pick up the 300 comic book pages that were scattered throughout the city, like I had a choice between, do I want to stop every 30 seconds to do another bullshit event to keep my crime level down, or do I just want to put up with getting shot at and avoiding the big lasers between the buildings while I pick up the 300 comic book pages that I don't even give a shit about?
Yeah, that's about 12 comics.
Yeah. Yeah. So
just go buy the trade, Spidey.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, they do unlock a bunch of comics that you can look at, and Stan Lee's the worst comic book store of all time.
Yep.
He's also got the worst arcade game of all time.
Yes, that is the shittiest game ever.
Challenge levels.
It's like, hey, Stan, why don't you get rid of this and get, like, I don't know, Cyberball?
There's a challenge. There's this challenge arcade machine where you're just doing basically combat challenges. It's 5 waves per stage, 12 stages. So it's 60 different waves of combat, and it's different types of enemies coming at you, and you've got to beat them. But they were so lazy, they just got one of the floor palettes from one of the areas that you've been in, and then it's darkness. They couldn't even make a room to put you in for this bullshit. So I don't know, man. This thing is such a waste of time, and the fact that on the next-gen systems they want $60 for it is just kind of $60 on next-gen consoles. I think it's $50 on current-gen consoles. I think it's $40 on the PC. Unless you are just like the biggest Spider-Man fan in the world and you just want to have played everything, god damn, skip this shit.
What do you give it?
I give it a 2.
Ooh.
I give it a 2, man.
I think that's the worst rating you've given.
No.
No? Is it not?
Well, I might have given something else a 2 a few weeks ago, but I was just, at this point, I mean, when your Renegade level gets too low, people in the street are just like, fuck you, Spider-Man, as you swing by, and by the end of the game, I was like, yeah, I agree. Fuck you, Spider-Man.
Yes, fuck me.
Never forget, what you do defines who you are. Let's see if a hero or a menace will crawl from the dark.